She rolled in quietly. No one held the door. A teenager snickered, "We serving Halloween costumes now?" pointing at her faded camo jacket. The waitress didn't look up from her notepad. The cook called her sweetheart and told her to sit in the back. But 25 minutes later, the sheriff stood at her table and said, "We've been looking for you, Sergeant." Her name was Lena Moore. 48. Marine Corps. 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Kandahar. Honorable discharge, 2 commendations, and a limp she never complained about. These days, she wore old combat boots not because she missed the war, but because they were the only shoes that didn't pinch the bone she broke in Fallujah. The faded jacket she wore, the one people mocked, had a bullet hole she'd stitched herself. No one ever asked. And she never explained. She lived alone on the edge of town, in a one-room apartment above a supply store that no longer carried military gear. The landlord gave her a discount after learning her rank, staff sergeant, but always added, "Just pay on time, soldier." She never corrected him. Marines weren't soldiers. But she let it slide. Every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m., Lena came to Joe's diner. Sat in the same corner booth. Ordered black coffee and dry toast. She never asked for more. She always carried a small journal with her. Inside were hand-drawn maps, scribbled coordinates, and letters she never sent, each addressed to a name etched on a granite wall in D.C. But that morning was different. The town felt colder. The streets quieter. And when she rolled into the diner, the air shifted. She noticed a new server, a younger cook. The usual nods from regulars didn't come. And when she dropped her fork, a clatter barely louder than a whisper, not a single head turned. Not one hand helped. Only the clock ticked. All Lena wanted was a quiet morning. Just a seat. A sip of coffee. A place to sit where no one asked questions or reminded her of things she'd spent years trying to forget. Her routine wasn't about comfort. It was about control. Structure. Something the Corps had drilled into her bones and that civilian life had quickly tried to strip away. Every Tuesday, she claimed back just 1 hour of that structure. But beneath that ritual lay something deeper. A few weeks prior, Lena had received a letter. No stamp. No return address. Just a folded paper slipped under her apartment door. It read, "Saw your name. Heard what you did for 3rd Platoon. Call me. They're planning something for Memorial Day. They want you there." There was a number. A name she didn't recognize. Lena folded the note and put it in her journal. She didn't call. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But it stirred something. That Tuesday, when she rolled into Joe's, her bag held something different, a metal case. Dusty. Unopened in years. Inside was the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, the one she'd received for carrying an injured private 6 miles through gunfire. She wasn't going to show it to anyone. She just wanted to remember. Remember why she still mattered. She sat down in her booth, rested her journal on the table, the medal tucked beneath it, and exhaled softly. She didn't expect a parade. But she didn't expect what was about to happen either. It started subtle, the kind of silence that stings sharper than noise. The waitress approached the table next to hers first. Then the one across. She made eye contact with everyone but Lena. When she finally did glance her way, it was quick, dismissive. "I'll be right there," she mumbled, and never came. The cook, a stocky man in a stained apron, leaned out from the kitchen. "Coffee for the sweetheart," he called with a smirk. Lena gave a tight nod. "Black, please." "Course it is," he muttered. Then disappeared. Across the room, a teenager in a hoodie laughed under his breath and whispered something to his friend. "Loud enough." "What's she dressed for? Halloween?" The other boy snorted. "Nah, probably thinks she's still in Iraq." Lena said nothing. She could have spoken. Could have shut it down with a glance. But something in her spine said not today. Not in this place. Not surrounded by empty eyes and louder mouths. A couple near the door moved tables, glancing toward her boots. The woman scrunched her nose. "Smells like metal and dust," she said. Lena touched her jacket sleeve, as if brushing off something she couldn't see. It wasn't the first time she'd been overlooked. But it had never felt so intentional. Even the radio above the counter crackled with static, as if the diner itself refused to speak for her. So she sat still. Journal unopened. Metal untouched. Waiting for coffee that wouldn't come. 22 minutes passed. Still no service. The door opened and closed twice. New customers came in, sat down, were greeted with smiles. Water glasses clinked on their tables before their jackets even came off. Lena's table remained empty. Not even a napkin. She turned slightly to face the counter, hoping for eye contact, even pity. Nothing. The teen boys kept stealing glances, amused by her stillness, her silence. "I bet she's gonna salute the ketchup," one joked. "She probably talks to her fork like it's a rifle," the other added. Their laughter was soft but sharp, the kind that cuts more when no one else objects. Lena finally reached into her bag and slid the metal case out. Just slightly. Not to show, but to feel. A reminder, you were real. You did something. But before she could open it, a waitress brushed past and said under her breath, "People like you should sit in the back." Lena blinked. The last time she heard that phrase, it was shouted through a sandstorm by a commanding officer to a soldier who panicked under fire. But this wasn't war. This was home. Supposedly. She swallowed hard. Slipped the case back into her bag. And pulled her sleeve down to cover the core tattoo on her wrist. It wasn't shame she felt. It was invisibility. And invisibility has weight. The door chimed again. But this time, no one entered. Instead, a shadow crossed the window, broad, slow-moving, deliberate. A sheriff's car rolled to a stop just outside the diner. Not speeding. Not with lights. Just there. Inside, the murmurs dipped. One of the teenagers whispered, "Uh-oh. Someone's in trouble." The door opened. Sheriff James Denton. Mid-50s. Built like he still did drills every morning. Boots polished, silver badge gleaming. A man who didn't smile much, and when he did, it meant something. He stepped in. Didn't say a word. I scanned the room once. Then twice. And then he walked. Not toward the counter. Not toward the booth with the laughing kids. He walked straight toward Lena's table. The hush that fell over the diner wasn't from fear. It was from confusion. Lena straightened slightly, unsure whether to speak. Sheriff Denton stopped beside her booth, placed one hand lightly on the table, and said, voice low and clear, "We've been looking for you, Sergeant." Every head turned. Even the waitress froze mid-pour. The cook leaned out, eyes narrowed. Lena didn't move. But the air around her shifted. She met his eyes. Firm. Unshaken. Like she used to stare down maps before dawn raids. "Sir," she said, half question, half instinct. Sheriff Denton nodded. "You're Lena Moore. Staff Sergeant, 3rd Battalion, Echo Company?" She nodded slowly. The teenagers had gone silent. One had stopped mid-sip. The other leaned back, suddenly smaller in his hoodie. The sheriff took something from his pocket, a folded printout. "This came across my desk yesterday," he said, handing it to her. Lena unfolded it with cautious fingers. Her breath caught. It was a photo. She was in it. Mud-covered. Her arm around a wounded private, dragging him through smoke. The image was grainy, but her face, focused, gritted, resolute, was unmistakable. Underneath. Sergeant Lena Moore, unrecognized Valor nominee, Memorial Day, Arlington. Her hand trembled slightly. Denton continued, voice lower now. "They've been trying to reach you. Someone from your old unit, Jenkins, he tracked you down. Lena looked up. Why now? He smiled faintly. Because it's your turn to be seen. Behind him, the entire diner had shifted. Eyes were on her, but not in mockery. In something closer to recognition. The silence wasn't cruel anymore. It was reverent. And outside, more cars were pulling up. Something was happening. Something Lena hadn't expected. Lena stared at the photo in her hands. Her own face staring back, younger, sharper, covered in grit and fire. It felt like a lifetime ago. The metal under her journal suddenly felt heavier. She looked up at Sheriff Denton, her jaw clenched tight. I didn't ask for this. You didn't have to, he said gently. You earned it. But the weight of being noticed after years of being ignored pressed against her chest like armor that didn't fit anymore. I'm not ready for ceremonies and speeches. I don't need an award to remember what I did. That's not what this is, he said. This isn't about the war. It's about you. And all the times you came home, and were still invisible. Lena lowered her eyes. For a moment, her hands curled into fists in her lap. Then she looked around. The cook had vanished into the kitchen. The waitress wiped the same spot on the counter over and over. The teenagers avoided her gaze. One of them slid his phone off the table like it might protect him. Lena whispered, I just wanted a coffee. Denton nodded. You still can. But now you'll get it with the respect they should have given you the moment you walked in. She took a long breath, not shaky, not broken. Just tired. She started to gather her things, sliding the journal closed, tucking the metal case away, when she noticed the envelope beside her coffee cup. It wasn't hers. She picked it up slowly. On the front. To Sergeant Moore. From someone who never forgot. Inside, a letter written in shaky handwriting. And a name she hadn't heard in 20 years. The name hit her like a memory detonated in slow motion. Private First Class Daniel Marks. Her last rescue. The one she'd carried across broken ground, half-conscious and bleeding, after their convoy was hit in southern Kandahar. She remembered the weight of him. His blood on her back. The way he had whispered, "Don't leave me," as gunfire echoed behind them. She thought he hadn't survived. But this letter said otherwise. Sergeant Moore, it began, you saved my life in more ways than one. Not just in Kandahar, but long after. I never forgot you. And I'm not the only one. We're all still here. And we're watching. Tears pricked her eyes, sudden and unfamiliar. He went on, I heard you were in this town. I sent your name to the committee. They didn't hesitate. You're the reason I have a family now. A wife. 2 kids. Every birthday, I light a candle and whisper your name. Now it's your turn to be remembered. Lena folded the letter slowly, hands trembling. Sheriff Denton was still there. But now others stood behind him, 3 men in dress uniforms, quiet and composed. One was missing an arm. One walked with a cane. The third wore a silver star. They didn't speak. They just stood. And then, all at once, the first saluted. So did the others. Lena didn't rise. She didn't need to. She raised one hand, slow and deliberate. And saluted back. Not for the crowd. For them. For what they'd all carried. And for what no one else ever saw. The room didn't cheer. No one clapped. But the silence, the kind that once made Lena feel invisible, now wrapped around her like a flag at half-staff. The veterans stepped forward, one by one. The man with the cane extended a hand. Corporal Jimenez. You saved my brother, 2006, Al-Assad. He never forgot your name. She shook his hand. Firmly. Wordlessly. Another nodded. You were a ghost story in my unit, the kind that left footprints in fire. I didn't believe it until now. Even the cook returned, eyes lowered, no longer smug. He placed a fresh cup of coffee at her table, black, steaming, and stepped back without a word. The teenagers? They stood, unsure, but quiet. One whispered to the other, "That's the real thing." The other nodded, wide-eyed. "She's a Marine." For the first time in years, Lena smiled. Not wide. Not forced. Just enough. Sheriff Denton stepped aside, and one of the dress-uniformed men held out a small, velvet box. "This," he said softly, "is from all of us. We didn't forget." Inside, a silver coin, etched with the Marine Corps emblem on one side, and on the other. "For when no one sees you, we do." Lena held it like it might break. But it didn't. Neither did she. She finally sipped her coffee. And for once, it didn't taste like silence. It tasted like home. Outside, the sky had begun to clear. The late morning light spilled through the diner windows, golden and quiet. Lena sat at the same booth. Same corner. But nothing felt the same. A young girl, no older than 10, approached her hesitantly. She wore a faded jacket too big for her frame and clutched a napkin scribbled with crayon. "My brother's going to boot camp next week," she whispered. "He says you're a hero." Lena blinked. Took the napkin. It was a drawing, a stick figure with a green jacket and stars around it. She smiled, looked the girl in the eye. "Tell him, it's not about being a hero. It's about showing up. Every day. Even when nobody claps." The girl nodded solemnly. Then ran back to her booth. Denton stood near the doorway, watching her. He tapped his badge and said, "You ready for that interview tomorrow?" Lena took a deep breath. "I think I am." He smiled. "You've always been ready. The world just had to catch up." As he left, more people began to filter in. Not gawking. Not whispering. Just looking. A few nodded. One man removed his cap. Another held the door for an older veteran in a wheelchair. And no one told her to sit in the back. She belonged now. Not because she demanded it, but because she never stopped showing up. A week later, the diner was different. The corner booth, Lena's booth, had a new plaque on the wall. Reserved for Staff Sergeant Lena Moore. Seen. Respected. Never forgotten. People still came in for coffee and toast. But now, they lingered longer near her table. Some left coins beside the napkin holder, challenge coins, unit patches, tiny folded flags. She didn't ask for it. She just came in every Tuesday. The waitress who once looked through her now brought her order first. The teens who had mocked her now came in after school to ask about service, about the Marines, about what it's really like. She told them the truth. It's not about guns. Or medals. It's about being the one who stands when everyone else sits down. Local news aired her story. The VA called to ask if she'd speak at a panel. And the letter, the one from Daniel Marks, was framed next to the photo of her carrying him through the smoke. She never stopped sitting in that booth. But now, people saw her. Not for the scars. Not for the uniform. But for the space she never gave up. Because sometimes the loudest voice is the one that never had to shout.